Good afternoon, everyone. 4 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. It is indeed a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, for this, the 3rd of December, 2025. Hope everyone had a good Sports Tuesday. You are enjoying your Wednesday, as we like to dub it. Very, very simply put, a Woosah Wednesday. We'll get into that. As always, 2 hours to play with. Don't forget, you can capture me right here on my YouTube channel. Also, SR 102.9 The Game and Coastal Sports Digital Network on X. We're also broadcasting on X on multiple platforms, multiple accounts, as I mentioned. Very easy to get social with me as well on X and IG at Rich Q and Q, TikTok Rich Q. On the mic on, as we deem it, a Woosah Wednesday. So we've gotten some new listeners, a bunch of new listeners and guys that are engaging and commenting into the show. And we appreciate that big time. We got some good news coming up as well, as far as other platforms and the show going forward. But if you're new to a Woosah Wednesday, it's pretty easy. It's almost like the over-under on how long it takes before you, the listeners and the commenters, get under my skin. Now, I can tell you this. If a Woosah Wednesday was yesterday, then we would have had some problems. I probably would have cracked about 3 to 5 minutes into the show. But we got a lot to get into today, a little mixed bag, a little potpourri on this Woosah Wednesday. We've got the NFL to dive into. We've got MLB Hot Stove baseball, some rumors, and you got the news dropping right now as it stands in the NBA. What the big news with Giannis in Milwaukee, and he wants out. And this is something that we talked about for a while now, and I kind of wanted to start because we'll go heavy with the NFL in the 5 o'clock hour, and we'll start to give you a sneak peek, a little look ahead into week. Wow, we're already in week 14 in the NFL. So here's what's going on in the NBA, and I'll get into LeBron and JJ Redick as well. So multiple sources are saying that Giannis is basically, quote, mulling his future with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, look, he's an all-timer. He's he's a 2-time NBA MVP. We know future Hall of Famer. He's won a chip with the Milwaukee Bucks. And you look at the landscape in the Eastern Conference and you say to yourself, okay, well, this kid is in his prime, right? He just turned 30. And I get it. He's had a couple little nagging injuries here and there. But when he's on the floor, he gives you ridiculous production. You're talking about a player that'll give you 24 plus, 24 and 10 a night. He plays both ends of the floor. He rebounds. He cleans the glass. And he's meant a lot to that Milwaukee Bucks franchise. He's meant a lot to that community. And I think, listen, there's going to be shooters out there. I mean, let's just be honest, right? I mean, you'd be crazy if you're not interested in Giannis. And you can talk all you want, or he can talk about, or his reps can talk about, potential landing spots or build a team around me. We saw it blow up with the Philadelphia 76ers, did we not? Because the whole idea, when you have a franchise player or a player that you deem as a franchise-worthy player, like the Philadelphia 76ers felt they had in Joel Embiid, what did they do? They placated him. They placated him thinking, okay, we're going to build around you. We're going to give you the resources, and we're going to try to make it work. So what do? You bring in guys like Simmons, Harden, George, all these guys, right? All these guys. So it's one of these situations now where I'm saying to myself, well, if you're going to try to placate a guy like Embiid, you're certainly going to try to placate a player like Giannis. I mean, he's just too damn talented. You don't want to miss the boat with a player like Giannis. You'd be foolish. And you want a chip, you want a championship, but as we have seen, again, at the end of the day, what have you done for me lately? Right? It's all about that. What have you done for me lately is kind of the theme in the world of sports. You can talk about the NFL with some of these coaches winning. You can talk about baseball winning a World Series and then all of a sudden coming back and not even making the playoffs or winning a division next season. And 2 years later, the manager, the skipper's out. Same thing in the NBA. It's the same thing in the NBA. And what's really interesting is that, you look around in the Eastern Conference and Milwaukee, if you really are being honest, they're not a good basketball team right now. They're 9-13. They're almost as bad as the Bulls. They're not as bad as Charlotte, Brooklyn. Indiana has injuries, and then Washington is just a horrible franchise. They haven't played good basketball out of the gate. So I understand, why a player like Giannis is unhappy because they're struggling and he wants to win. And now it's like, okay, let's talk about my future. What are you doing? I'm averaging 30 points this season. I'm averaging 30. I'm shooting right around 64, 65% from the floor. I got about 6 or 7 dimes. You know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm bringing to the table. Why can't we figure this out? I need some guys to help me out. We've had some bad losses. We had a bad skid where we lost 6 straight, 7 of 8. We're not playing any defense. I need some help. I need some help. I can't do it all by myself. And you see, it is a big time drop off when you look at Giannis and his contributions to a kid like Ryan Rollins, who's averaging about 17. So obviously, there are going to be 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that are going to be in for that hunt. Because why wouldn't you? I mean, I mentioned this before. Like, listen, if you think about it, where does he want to go? He wants to go to the Knicks. He wants to go to New York. And I'm telling you right now, we talked a little bit about this after last season. And even when we were talking about Karl Anthony Towns during the playoffs and his limitations. So you got a player in Giannis, you got his agent, and there's a reason you're starting these conversations now. There's a reason you're starting these conversations now because you realize, man, it ain't going to happen with Milwaukee going forward. That ship has sailed. They're not going to build them around me. And by the time they do that, I'm going to be 33, 34, kind of like the Embiid issue in Philadelphia. I want to win another championship. I want to go to a big market. And we know that the Knicks have always been enamored with Giannis. We know that those names have been linked for the last several months. And listen, the Knicks, if you kind of borrow the phrase from Brett Brown and his Boston accent, they've been trying to go stall hunting for years. And now you're talking about one of the biggest names on the market, potentially on the market. The Knicks are 13-7 in the Eastern Conference, which is good right now for fourth place behind the Pistons, who are showing a little staying power for a young team that's had to, go through the dreck over the last 3, 4, 5 years. Raptors, Miami, all better teams. So they know this. The Knicks feel they need to make a move. Now you're bringing that potential star power to New York. Are you kidding me? Now here's the issue. The Knicks don't have a lot of first-round draft picks in the future to give the Bucks. Do they have players that Milwaukee would say, well, wait a second. Now we're on this path to potentially getting a playoff spot. I believe so. And here's another reason I want this trade to go down. As much as I might like him as a person, let's be honest, Karl Anthony Towns is not Giannis. So any trade package for Giannis, Milwaukee, and the Knicks, it's going to involve Cat, period. It might be Bridges in his contract. It might be OG. I mean, think about it. His departure from the Knicks. I mean, so you gotta blend in 3 players, and that's just how it is. 2, 3, 4 players, and obviously it's going to start with Towns. And I think Milwaukee, you can make the case they might be hesitant to trade with the Knicks, considering the fact that they're in the Eastern Conference. So what's going to be the best offer? So we'll dive into that a little bit. Also, I don't know if you guys caught this. Did you happen to see LeBron James last night? And you start to see that marriage has quickly eroded, dissolved. You got LeBron James last night in a blowout loss. A blowout loss. I mean, you got LeBron James just yakking it up. I think they were down 20 something plus, yapping it up with the Suns bench down 21, 22 points. And his boy, the guy that he was doing the pod with, JJ Redick, had this look of disgust. I mean, almost of disdain, like he wanted to strangle somebody. And I think it's significant now because you're seeing, once again, we know the NBA is a players-driven league. And they got waxed the other night. They had a nice little 6-7 game winning streak, and then boom, you go against Phoenix. They play without Booker, and basically you lose them for what, the final 3/4 of the game. You got Luka committing turnovers left and right. And then I think ultimately what transpires is that you've got JJ and LeBron. And if you didn't notice it, it's interesting because you're starting to see the fracture there with the Lakers and LeBron and JJ. And it's worth noting. It's worth noting when the Lakers were looking to make the hire, the first thing I said out of my mouth was steer clear of JJ Redick because he has no idea what he's getting himself into. Because if you're buddies with somebody, it's really hard to coach them. It really is. But I'm telling you, you got a franchise player, you got one of your most decorated players and former podcast co-host, and he's sitting there just laughing his ass off while you're getting blown out by 23. And here's the worst. JJ Redick is trying to call a timeout. He's trying to drop a play for James and Luka bringing the ball up. And what's LeBron doing? Under a minute to go, down 94-73 in the third, you're sitting there too busy yapping it up, hanging out with your former teammate, James Goodwin. And you can hear JJ, if you go on social, you can hear him shout, Bron, 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 and he burns a timeout. And listen, at that moment, when you think about it, LeBron's all about me, me, me. He was no in rush at all to go to the sideline, to his bench. He wasn't. And again, man, JJ's just shaking his head. And right now, I'm telling you at this moment, you start to see that divide. You start to see that fracture. That happens a lot more than you think it happens. It's more pronounced in the NBA. It really is. It's more pronounced in the NBA. And it's not like the Lakers are a bad team. I think they're 15-5. I mean, I don't know. I don't believe anyone's beating OKC. I just don't see it. They only lost one game. They won 10 straight. They're just a friggin' monster defending NBA champs. So we'll dive into that a little bit. As promised, we will get into a little hot stove basketball, right? We will get into a little hot stove, I should say, baseball. And yeah, don't listen. You guys can butcher me all you want on Giannis. That's what I call him, Giannis. I've heard people call him Giannis. I know the friggin' G is silent. Whatever. Anyway, so we'll get into that as well because I can see the comments coming in. You guys know I butcher names all the time, so we'll call him Giannis. Is that better? You're more comfortable with me saying Giannis as opposed to Giannis Antetokounmpo. How about that for you? So we'll get into that. We got hot stove baseball. I promise you guys we're going to dive into that a little bit. Boston, the Phillies, the Mets, the Yankees. You've got some free agent names being floating out there. You got the Dodgers perhaps making a big-time move that would totally disrupt the whole landscape of baseball. Totally disrupt the whole landscape of baseball because the Dodgers are showing you right now, we got the payroll, we got the money, defending World Series champs, and we'll start to get into Week 14 in the NFL. Now, I'm not sure how many people are watching the Hard Knocks. It's almost comical at this point, the narratives that are, being pushed, to be quite honest. And like I said, I don't subscribe too much into those shows. But it is funny when you kind of peel back the curtain, you can see which franchises look utterly rudderless and pretty much, no direction, almost like clownish. And I kind of got that with the NFC East debut episode. I really did. I mean, if you're going like instant reaction, it was boring, right? And I think sometimes that can be a good thing, but the Cowboys, you get the rights. You only use the sound bite when they win a game. I mean, let's be honest, right? And I'm not enamored by this, especially during the season, because they're never going to peel back the curtain. But I can tell you this, you already know that Washington is dysfunctional with all these injuries. And we already know what's going on with the Giants and Joe Shane. But I know everyone's reading into Sirianni, basically, going off the body language, what he's saying, what he's not saying, how he acts, how he comes off on camera, how he portrays himself. You guys can get all crazy, all you want. The bottom line is, as I mentioned, right now, as we start to creep into the end of the NFL, nothing is written in stone with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's all I'm going to say. All right, we'll crank it up. We'll get to some of your comments. I want to get into some baseball as well. D chimes in. What's going on, brother? Hey, your Cowboys look good. Q Noter, Neon Dion is the next Browns head coach. Absolutely not. New phones. Who this? AKA He 12 Man, AKA Heisman, who always has to be critical of me on the air. No, man. We got unfinished business in Boulder. However, they keep playing with his son's future. Then we will revisit the topic. But thanks for the consideration. We'll pass up the chain. Also adds with my butchering, the G is silent. There's no reason to say "oh man" too, because this old man, let's be honest. He takes care of business. You're really bad with names, by the way. What's your real name? Since you put my government on here as often as you possibly can. What is that talking about? My government. What are you talking about? New headphones? Who this? AKA. What are you talking about? Want you to spell it out? Giannis. I know it's Giannis, so I say Giannis. Giannis. Antetokounmpo. Hiwanaska, hibiscus, echinacea. What do you want me to say? Kevin Nixman chimes in. Q from your lips to God's ears. We would love as Knicks fans to get Giannis. He would open up spacing on the floor and take a lot of pressure off Brunson. He would, but what are you giving up? And is Milwaukee, would Milwaukee do that? Would Milwaukee decide we're going to trade him and keep him in the conference? Who knows? I like, because it is such a player driven league. They, NBA years ago, these players, they're not really saying where I'm going. I trade you. That's it. Right? But his numbers are just ridiculous. He's averaging 30 points a game, 10 rebounds, 6-7 assists. And again, he doesn't really have complementary help. He just doesn't. And in the NBA, what do you need? Batman always needs a Robin. Always. Batman always needs a Robin. And a lot of times that's how you win. Most of the times, the majority of the times, 95% of the time in the NBA, 1-2 punch. So he's definitely going to pick and choose. And he's got leverage because of who he is. Giannis. He's got leverage. And I would be, if the Knicks swooped in, I would be absolutely just ecstatic because I'm not the biggest Karl Anthony Towns fans. I saw his limitations and the liability last year during the playoffs. I really did. But I'm telling you, man, you give me him and Jalen Brunson play off the ball. Have Brunson, if you want to bring him up the ball, and you can have Giannis camped out anywhere. That's crazy. You don't want to waste a great player's prime. So now it's that grade A trade where you might have to mortgage the future for now to win. And I'm okay with that, especially in the NBA. Look at Detroit. Detroit's been a horrible franchise over the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You guys probably know, 1 or 2 players on Detroit. Or you might throw Cade Cunningham at me. That's it. But now look at them. They're young. They made the right moves. They drafted well. They showed patience. And now they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Now, am I going to suggest that the Detroit Pistons have this ridiculous staying power? No. But I can also make the case for OKC a couple years ago. They were bad, and then they progressively got better. And obviously, they have a very good player in SGA. And they're the defending NBA champs. So in the NBA, you could turn it around. You just got to have that 1-2 punch. You really do. You have to have that 1-2 punch. And you got a player who decides, hey, man, at this point, I want to go somewhere. I want to win. I want to win again. I want to cement my legacy. And I believe it's already cemented. He's a Hall of Famer. Now, LeBron's legacy, as some of you guys are tweeting at me, Sarge in Delaware chimes in asking me if I think it's taken a hit. I don't really think it's taken a hit. I just think at this stage of his career, LeBron is who he is. I mean, that's That's really it. LeBron is a 40-year-old player who's the twilight of his career. And you guys can sit there and, you can have the argument of where you want to place him when it's all said and done. But if you notice, his body's breaking down a little bit. He's only played in a handful of games. Um, Luka is the guy, right? Luka is their primary offensive scorer. That's just, that's the reality. He's 25, 26 years old. LeBron's 40. He's not going to be able to log as many minutes. And you're starting to see that friction. LeBron's going to do what he's going to do. I'm not going to tell you it's killing his legacy, because his legacy is already cemented. That's another thing that drives me crazy. Even when we talk baseball, are you going to tell me that Mike Trout's not a Hall of Famer? He's not a generational player. Why? Because he hasn't been that same player over the last several years. LeBron is a 40-year-old man that up until this season, any season is going to average 28 to 33. But Father Time catches up. He's not the same player. We all know that. But you can't sit there and just start yakking it up when the coach is trying to get your attention because you're LeBron James and you've been in the league for 20-something odd years and you think it's funny and it's cute. You're down 21 and you're just, yakking it up with a bench of the opposition bench. It's not going to sit well. It's not. Antetokounmpo. Listen, I can say it. I can't spell it, right? Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? There are some names I refuse to even try to pronounce. And I'm telling you, I also think that's, let me pull this comment up. Is it necessary to say old man? Like, that's kind of discriminatory. Yesterday we had someone say my face was punchable. And now all of a sudden we're throwing out the old man. I can tell you right now, this old man can still, whip some asses. Just remember, right? That's all I'm saying. Come on. Now he comes back with an even, cornier statement. I have an honest question. How can anyone not like LeBron? Really? He's an excellent ambassador of the game. Great player. Activist. Active in his community. What's not to like? What are we doing here? Really? Is that really the fake reader of books? LeBron James is a friggin' fraud. A fraud. LeBron James, all-time great, Hall of Famer, fraud. Especially at this point in his career. Don't give me how many people can't stand LeBron? And by the way, I'm not the only one, so you can take the, screaming on the porch crap. I can pull about 1,000 people, and I bet you 999 will sit there and say they don't like LeBron. You just don't do that. You just don't do that. You have to turn around, have a little respect for the head coach. Pay friggin' attention. Seriously. Fraud. Really? Do you want me to get into it? Let's not go down that rabbit hole, right? Let's not go. He is an absolute fraud. Let's not again get into that. Please stop. Stop. I'm not talking about the gambling stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that at all. No one's even going close. But you want to go to 4 or 5 years ago? Right, when he was prioritizing his financial interests in China, right? When he's talking over the human rights issue, do you want to get into that? Come on, stop. Come on, Vince. I would expect a little better from you with that before you come to the show, because you already know I do my research and I know my shit, and you want to start bringing me that kind of nonsense. Come on, stay in your lane, will you? Talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh wait, you're not a Steelers fan anymore. Talk about your Jags fan. Oh, wait. Let's talk about the Jags and Trevor Lawrence. Come on, stop. Mark and Y for chimes in. Q, I know you're going to talk a little hot stove baseball. What's your thoughts on the rumor mill with the fighting Phils? What's going to go on with Schwarber? I can tell you a landing spot that I believe you might find Schwarber bomb. Giants. San Francisco Giants. San Francisco Giants. If you're talking about, potential outfield trade target, right? He is a potential, when we're talking about the Phillies and we're talking about Schwarber, well, when you're talking about Schwarber and a potential outfield trade target for the Phillies, let me walk that back. So San Fran wants a power hitter, and they haven't had a power hitter for a while. They just he would be a good fit. I think they had who was the last player that hit maybe 30 home runs for them was Willie Adames. And then obviously you had to go Bonds 2004. Schwarber would be that perfect fit. So it's a priority, right? Also, we were trying to figure out what the hell's going to happen with Pete Alonso with the Mets, and now you got the Red Sox that are interested. So the Mets and the Reds are reportedly also in the mix for Schwarber. JT Realmuto, again, the Red Sox are also interested in him. Ranger Suarez, I think he resigns with the Philadelphia Phillies. You've got Castellanos. You got 20 million left on his contract. I got to trade him. You're going to have to eat most of that salary to move him. Alec Bohm. There's another name out there. But Schwarber's coming off a career year, and the Giants want power in that lineup. They want power in that lineup. And the more I think about it, I think the Reds could be a dark horse landing spot for Schwarber. I really could. Now, are you going to look at Alonso and Schwarber as kind of this, chess match, chess moves? Who's going to blink twice? Right? Is it going to benefit, who's going to benefit more? The Mets, the Phillies. You got two sluggers. They are the most sought after sluggers right now, or two of the most sought after names in the offseason. And if you're talking about teams that need a powerful bat, there you go. Alonso hit 38 home runs. Schwarber hit 56. They both drove in over 126 runs. The batting average, obviously, Schwarber is not, your quintessential type of slugger when it comes to batting average. It's always going to be a low one, where Alonso can put the ball in play right around 270. Schwarber's are 240. So there's going to be suitors for these guys, right? Now, imagine if the Mets sign Schwarber and the Phillies sign Alonso. That's something, would it not be? That would be interesting. Talk about, you can disagree about how he's a fraud. Stay in your lane for an opinion. I see LeBron hate is deep. Just asking what he actually done. I already gave you. I already told you his BS. His hypocrisy. I'm not going to spend 2 hours on LeBron James today. I just pretty much made it pretty clear. You want me to do the research for you? He's a fraud, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. He is a fraud. And all you got to do is go back a couple years ago. The whole thing's, I read these books. I mean, half the time they're closed. Upside down. He's a fraud. Stop. He's a fraud. Great player, Hall of Fame player, but it's just, he's not a likable player. He's just not. He's just not. And, there also have been some, lawsuits as well, right? When you're talking about the player option to continue playing for the Lakers, 2025, you signed that 2-year deal, paid approximately, I think, $52 million. If you go back, but again, go back to 2009, 2010. You're talking about the decision. I'm going to take my talents here, there. Fraud. Just stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. Fraud. There are a lot of people that don't like LeBron. He's a great player. He's a Hall of Fame player. I don't have to like him. And I already gave you my reasons why. I don't have to like everyone, and they don't have to like me. Who cares? And by the way, have an opinion. Let's just also squash this notion. Having opinion. When did we get these? So. And remember, who does LeBron have a long-standing relationship? Right? You're talking about the relationship with China through the work with Nike and the NBA. So yeah, you got positive interactions, but it's also somewhat controversial. And he made those comments a couple years ago. regarding who was the GM at the time, the current Sixers GM, Morey, when he was with the Houston Rockets. And then all of a sudden, when it's time to actually speak up or say something, he remains silent. So, yes, to me, that's a fraud. That's hypocrisy. That's hypocrisy. I'll cash the check, but I'm not going to say anything that's going to be controversy, or I'm actually, I'm not, I'm going to steer clear of it once I know that the check cashes. Come on. I'm not doing that. I'm not. So you're allowed to have an opinion. It doesn't have to be hating. That's what I do. I have an opinion. And, LeBron is just, he is a fraud. I can tell you this. Um, you know, he's, I don't know how it's going to end for LeBron James, but if it goes south and they start to struggle and there's this disconnect, now the Lakers would be in this very precarious position because would they even consider getting rid of JJ Redick once again just to appease who? LeBron James. That's why the NBA at times can be frustrating because we know it is a player driven league. And ultimately, at the end, the players get coaches fired. In these other sports, what happens most of you trade the player. You don't do that in the NBA. Player doesn't like the head coach. The head coach is usually the one to go, especially if it's a all-star, if it's a face of the franchise, a top 5 or 6. That's a kind of, in the NFL, we rarely see it because we look at the quarterbacks and they're the face of the franchise, but quarterbacks have been traded. Franchise quarterbacks have been traded. They have been moved. They have been cut. They have been released. When their best years were behind them. I know sometimes it's not the easiest move to make, but in the NBA, you get to a certain point and you shouldn't show up to coach like that. You shouldn't. I mean, you had a subpar game, a bad loss. You had Luka carry the offense. You had too many turnovers. And you've got LeBron struggling on the offensive side of the floor, only playing a handful of games, and you're ignoring the coach. You're blowing off the coach. So he's not immune to criticism, guys, because he's freaking LeBron James. I'm sorry. He's just not. He doesn't get a pass. And we talked about this when the Lakers were hiring JJ Redick. I think it's very hard to coach a buddy or a friend. It's tough. It can be awkward because ultimately you're like, okay, am I going to put my friendship to the side? Is he going to respect me as a head coach? Is he going to respect me as his buddy? And you kind of you get the sense this is maybe a little bit of the the crack in the armor. D in Wilmington chimes in Q. There's no way in hell that Schwarber lands with the Mets and Alonso lands with the Phillies. Okay. I don't know. Maybe you guys know something I don't know. Look, Schwarber is feast or famine, is he not? Alonso, you're talking about a guy that can get on base a little bit, which, Schwarber, I'm going to hit a home run or I'm going to strike out. Philly's got some decisions to make. They really do. Now, you already saw the Mets sign Devin Williams to that 3-year, $51 million deal. Love that move. If you're a Mets fan, that is a big time move. You got no opt outs or options, includes $6 million signing bonus. You spread it over 3 seasons. Now you're going to bolster the back of a bullpen. That's something that they needed to improve during the offseason. Is he going to be used as a setup man or a closer? Who knows? But that's a big move for the Mets. I did mention too, a potentially huge move that would probably change the whole landscape of baseball again. And it has to do with the team that spends a lot of money. No, not the Boston Red Sox. No, not the New York Yankees. How about your defending World Series champs and the Dodgers, who are looking to basically just break the bank? And you're talking about trade, a massive trade with Detroit's. This kid's an ace, Tyreek Schoolball. This kid is unbelievable. This kid is absolutely unbelievable. There's like, you know, you've got so many potential trade candidates when you start talking about MLB and the rumor mill. And this kid made 31 starts. He was 13-6, 2.21 ERA. His whip was 0.89. His strikeout to walk ratio was unbelievable. And he tossed close to 200 innings. I mean, can you imagine sticking that kid in that rotation? That's unfair. That's absolutely unfair. And the Dodgers are going to try to make a play for this kid. I mean, it absolutely changes the whole landscape of baseball. It does. Mike in Ohio chimes in. Q, did you see that Deshaun Watson was designated to return to practice? I did. I don't care. It's without a doubt the worst contract in NFL history because every cent was guaranteed. Chris in Pittsburgh chimes in. Q, I know you're a big Tomlin fan. Did you listen to the rat ship, as you like to call it, talking about Mike Tomlin's time coming to an end? Would he be in line for the Penn State job? So I guess Roethlisberger went on his podcast and said that Mike Tomlin would be a good fit for Penn State. I've already told you guys this. This is just my opinion and my thought on Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is a good coach. He's not a great coach. Mike Tomlin has not won a lot of playoff games, and he hasn't been consistently good when it comes to winning playoff games in years. I thought it was a mistake to bring in Rodgers. They had an opportunity to get Justin Fields on the cheap, and I understand Justin Fields got benched by the Jets. I get it. You are going to get less of a headache with Justin Fields than Aaron Rodgers. They let Justin Fields walk. The Jets came in and they grabbed Justin Fields. Obviously, they turned around. They got Taylor as a backup for a little depth. They didn't want Rodgers to come back. There's a reason the Jets front office and Aaron Glenn did not want Aaron Rodgers returning as their starter. So he goes to Pittsburgh, a franchise that doesn't really budge when it comes to certain things and is kind of no nonsense. And ultimately, when things go south for a player like Aaron Rodgers, and he starts to call out teammates, he starts to say, well, I would love for these guys to show up for film study and run the right routes. That is a direct shot at the head coach, because Aaron Rodgers is basically saying the head coach is not holding these guys accountable. And that is something that's not debatable. The same thing happened with the Giants. Brian Daboll decides, I'm going to fine Abdul Carter. Okay, that's great. You fine him. What does that mean? Remember, like, if you have siblings and you get in a fight with one of your siblings, or better yet, your mother says, no, absolutely not. So you start, or maybe your kids do it. The missus says no. And what does your son do? What does your daughter do? They cry a little bit, they kick and scream, they wait for mom to leave the room, and then they go to dad and ask dad. Like, it's the same thing going on. Like, Brian Daboll, you can't coach like that. You can't reprimand like that. You can't, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to suspend you. I'm going to deactivate you. I'm going to bench you, but you come over here. You know what? I get it. You're a top 3, 4, 5 draft pick. You got some great talent. I'm just going to fine you. You're good. You're good. Don't worry about it. Keep doing your thing. And this argument that you make concessions for certain players, everyone in sports understands that. But the difference is, are you performing? Like, somebody came, they were asking me the other day, your Taylor analogy was wrong. No, it was 100% correct. The reason that Parcells gave Lawrence Taylor free reign is because no matter what, you were getting 1 to 2 sacks a game, and you were getting an all-pro defensive MVP, player of the year effort, even if the guy was hungover. So now you're talking about a rookie who's had a cup of coffee in the NFL. Now, I don't want to keep going down that rabbit hole with the Giant talk, but the point is, you have to, as a head coach, you have to take control. You cannot let the inmates run the asylum. And what I'm seeing in Pittsburgh right now, when you get players start barking, when you get Aaron Rodgers, and you know who he is, you know what Aaron Rodgers does. When things go south for Aaron Rodgers, he looks at everyone else. He doesn't hold himself accountable. He just doesn't. He got pissed off a couple years ago with Green Bay with the young receivers dropping all the balls. He was calling out the coaching staff last year with the New York Jets, which obviously led to everything getting blown up from Salah to Hackett to everyone. And he wanted his players, a la like a LeBron, bring my guys, and it didn't work out. Now in Pittsburgh, you're supposed to have a stud receiver, are you not? I mean, the last time I checked, and again, you guys tell me if I'm off base with this. Pittsburgh does have a little bit of talent, do they not? Like that running back's not bad. Do you not have a very good wide receiver, a stud wide receiver in DK Metcalf? I mean, this guy's like good for 1,000 plus every season, 1,200 yards. Maybe the quarterback is just not getting him the ball. Maybe it's on the quarterback. Sure. Maybe on the offensive line, the play calling. But you don't need to go on the record after a bad loss where the offense struggles and you haven't played particularly well this season. Aaron Rodgers has not played well this season because he's also a 40-something-year-old quarterback that's taken a lot of hits and he's well past his prime. So I'm going to make my point, and I apologize that it's long-winded. So you look at Aaron Rodgers, okay, what's been your signature game, Aaron Rodgers? Like, where's been that signature game? Was it to open up the season against the Jets? If that's the case, that was what, 13 weeks ago? The days of Aaron Rodgers throwing 5 touchdown passes, 4 touchdown passes, 365 yards, those days are long gone. So against Buffalo, he goes 10 of 21 for $117. Against Cincinnati, he goes 9 of 15 for $119. And he's going to sit there and he's going to call out the wide receivers. And he might be correct in that regard of, hey, these guys got to show up, do routes, watch film study. But you don't need to air that dirty laundry. And that also falls on Tomlin, who's supposed to reel these guys in. I mean, that's what a veteran head coach does. And Tomlin has not been able to do this. And he hasn't been able to do it for a while. Michael chimes in, Broncos country, let's ride. Q, how does this story end with LeBron on a good or bad note? I think at this point with LeBron, it never ends well. It's how sports are. When you're talking about Hall of Fame players, and these guys have such ego and they have such pride. In basketball, guys will hang around. They can be the compiler. Same thing in baseball. In football, it's sad to watch, right? These guys get old. And I think we're more focused on the quarterback because that's the face of the franchise. That's supposed to be the de facto leader. Nobody wants to see Joe Namath 2 bum knees with the Rams. Nobody wants to see Johnny Unitas in 72 with the Chargers. Nobody wanted to see, I don't know, even Montana. Montana had flashes with Kansas City, but then Montana got old and all those injuries piled up. It's tough to watch. There are certain guys that are able to go out on top. Elway, perfect example, right? Elway, Peyton Manning, Brady got the chip, hung around for a year or two, fine, but still walks away unscathed. In the NBA, these guys hang on. Remember years ago, the Lakers and the first kind of dream team, the Gary Paytons, the Karl Malone. These guys wanted rings. They were desperate for rings. So what did they do? They just floated around. They floated around. It was a tough watch. And they were not at their prime. I mean, I'm sorry, they weren't. Karl Malone was 40 years old. when he decided, I want to go to the Lakers. I want to try to get that ring. That's a tough watch. You're talking about a player that played 20 something years with one franchise. But what happens? They finally have an opportunity. They get to the NBA finals and then they're beat up by a team in the Pistons that I guess you can say that might be one of the definitions of the last great team, meaning you look at that roster and no one blew you away on that Pistons squad. I mean, they really didn't. Yeah, you had a veteran in Hubert Davis, right? You had Chauncey Billups, who was a couple years in his career. You had Lindsey Hunter. You had Rip Hamilton, right? Who else did they have on that squad? You had Bobby Sura. You had Ben Wallace. You had Rasheed Wallace. You had the Big Nasty. These were not wall-to-wall Hall of Famers. Chucky Atkins. They weren't wall-to-wall Hall of Famers. That Lakers team was much better. But that Pistons team played like a team. That Pistons team played like a team. That Lakers team had so many egos. Rick Fox, Donovan George, Ho Grant, Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, ego, Gary Payton, ego. It never worked out. LeBron, he wants to play. Only LeBron James knows when he's going to hang it up. And I just go back to last year with the whole Bronny situation. Rich Paul, don't draft his kid. We'll never do business with you. Everyone and their mother knew the Lakers were going to draft Bronny James. Okay, that's great. Father and son on the floor. That's a pretty cool thing, man. That'll never happen again. That's unique. That's a moment. That's great. But it's just, it soured me on stuff, man. It soured me on stuff. And it's probably not going to jive with some people. It's probably going to annoy some people, but you got to do what's best for the organization. You got to do what's best for the organization. You can't placate the players all the time. You can't. And we see it too many times in sports. A la Aaron Rodgers, go get me my wide receivers. And it still blew up in the face of Aaron Rodgers. Joel Embiid, give me a guy I can play with. All right, well, let's go through it. Ben Simmons, didn't work out. James Harden, didn't work out. Paul George, didn't work out. Maxey, it's not working out. Why? Because you're not available, Joel Embiid. And sometimes you just got to realize that it's not worth the headache. And I have no idea how it ends with LeBron. I don't think the Lakers are winning the championship, if that's what you're asking me. I mean, they're OKC. They're a flat-out juggernaut. I'm close to boycotting baseball. Yeah, but you're not. You're not going to do that. Teams have money they're going to spend. It's the nature of the sport. It's the nature of the sport. Look at the Mets and Cohen. That guy, he will spend. Now, he's spending a lot of money and missed the postseason. But he's a businessman first and foremost. I want to put out the best product on the field. That's what I want to do. I mean, you got an owner that turns around and writes an apology to Mets fans. You don't really see that a lot. All the money they spent, and they had a colossal collapse. The Mets did. That's a choke job of choke jobs, man. I mean, that is a choke job of choke jobs. That payroll, you're talking about $340 million. You own the best record in the sport in mid-June. You were 20-something games over 500. And then you play like one of the worst teams over the last 30-something odd years, the final 3+ months of the season. Now you got a big-time off season to figure it out. So I would say pump the brakes. There's nothing to boycott. It's just how baseball is. And this is coming from a Yankees fan who, oh, by the way, went on the record years ago and said there's no reason for the Yankees to go and get Stanton. None. And now we're seeing what the Dodgers, you win, the rich get richer. Right now, the largest, let me pull this up for you. Largest payrolls. So the largest payrolls in 2025, obviously the Mets. The Dodgers were right there couple bucks fewer than the Mets. The Yankees, the Phillies, Toronto. So you're talking all playoff teams, right? Obviously the Mets. Texas, Houston, Atlanta, San Diego, Chicago, and then obviously the small market teams: Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I have to check Seattle's payroll, see what they were at too. Um, but that's baseball. You're not going to boycott it. You're not. It's just you want. You know, we talk about the competitive balance, right? And I think as much as I said the worst thing for baseball was having Toronto and the Dodgers in the World Series because of markets, obviously one being in Canada and the other being in States, but on the West Coast, Dodgers are a great baseball town and franchise. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise because that was a wonderful World Series. I mean, that was, you talk about an all-time great World Series. That was an all-time great World Series. You had high drama, you had unbelievable, you go into extras, you just, I mean, it was it was a fantastic World Series. And again, I don't consider Toronto as a big time market, especially payroll wise. The Dodgers, yes. And eventually what's going to happen? Some of these bad teams, they're going to figure it out. They might not be able to spend as much, but they're going to be much more competitive. And then I think you start to um, shift the scales a little bit with some of these teams. Like, yes, we don't want Cleveland, Houston, the Yankees, Boston every single season. You get tired of it. Okay, Atlanta for so many years, and St. Louis, and then the Giants when the Giants were really good, and then you got the Padres who can never friggin' figure it out, even though they have unbelievable talent, and the Dodgers. You don't always want to see the Mets, the Phillies, the Dodgers. I mean, if you're a purist, would you want to see Pittsburgh in the NLCS? Maybe, because they've got a great pitcher, and Pittsburgh's a great baseball town, and it's a storied franchise. But do you want to see him against Colorado? No. You want to see him against Arizona? No. You want to go old school and see Pittsburgh and St. Louis, or Pittsburgh and the Phillies, or Pittsburgh and the Mets? Okay. But that's a team that doesn't have a lot of money. They just don't. And there's reasons why they lose their 85, 90 plus games a season. There's a reason why Colorado is a horrible, horrible baseball team. I mean, they were so bad. I mean, they were horrible. And it's one of the reasons that they turned around and did what? They took a page out of a winning culture in the Dodgers and hired um, um, Josh Burns as their GM. So now we basically we think we weakened the Dodgers. Now we're bringing in a guy that knows how to win and can turn it around. And they got DiPotesto, who's a good baseball mind. And I don't know how good they're going to be, but they've stripped the Dodgers of their VP, and the Dodgers are still going to be fine. But point is, these small market teams are trying to figure out a way to compete. They understand from a dollars and cents standpoint, they're never going to be able to do it, but they could try to field a competitive product on the field. That's all they're trying to do. That's all they're trying to do. Don't boycott baseball, please. All right, fast approaching the 5 o'clock hour, 16 to book, 60 to play with. Got to remind you, we're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, Three Brooks Bourbon, Get Ready with Tea. Played Against Sports, 2 locations, South Jersey, Deptford, and of course, Mount Laurel. We will come back on the other side. Got some more NBA thoughts coming up as well, a little more hot stove baseball, and we'll start to look ahead already to week 14 in the NFL. I mean, the season flies by. Time flies by. Time waits for no one. All right, quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. All right, 5 o'clock hour. We'll take you up to 6 on a Woosah Wednesday, which, again, we probably were getting close to a little bit of the Woosahs with so many mispronunciations, but that's okay. All right, week 14 in the NFL is among us. I'll still keep taking your tweets as well, at Rich Q on Q. And I will tell you updates on the YouTube Shorts. They are definitely, we are cranking them out, man, at the end of the day. We are cranking them out, and they are getting very, very frustrated. What do we got here? Let me get to a couple. JD chimes in Q. Did one of your listeners actually suggest that Dion was going to Cleveland? Yeah, that's not happening. And that would be, to be, again, that would be absolutely the worst thing that the Cleveland Browns can do. I mean, that's beyond malpractice. Deion Sanders is not coaching in the NFL. It's just not happening. It's not going to happen. There's a better shot of Belichick coming back than Deion in the NFL. He's kind of found his niche. With college coaching. And remember too, he's had a lot of medical issues. So who knows how much longer he wants to actually even coach the college game, if that makes sense. But listen, I think he's done a good job. He's brought in, he's changed. He's a difference maker, right? He's a difference maker. And because he's got that cachet and he's got the name, and by the way, Darius Slay got claimed by the Buffalo Bills. So he goes from playing against the Bills last week, and now he's part of Buffalo. So the Steelers fans that were maybe clamoring for Slay, no. For the Eagles fans that maybe are clamoring for Slay, no. Write that off. Slay right now with the Buffalo Bills. But I think there's going to be, I feel as though we've just banged this drum ad nauseum. There's going to be 6 or 7 head coaching vacancies. It's the NFL. There's turnover. And I think a lot of it has to do because there's piss poor talent evaluation, especially at the quarterback position. And that's really the only position in all of sports that can either save a head coach's job or, be the cause of the head coach getting fired. Like, name me another sport and another player where those two go hand in hand. You can't. You're not going to sit there, you go to the bullpen and your reliever blows a couple games. The manager's not getting fired. Now, you might sit there and say, why'd you take this guy out and why'd you bring him in the 9th in the playoffs, blah, 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 in a game 7? Totally different story if you got the track record of doing it. But as I said, in the NFL, quarterback, head coach, hand and hand. Hand and hand. You just know that I can either salvage you, help you, or guess what, man? If I falter, you're going to get you're going to be out of a job. So for teams like the Jets, who maybe they believe Glenn is the guy, for the Giants, who need a head coach, for Tennessee, who needs a head coach, Arizona might, New Orleans, Atlanta, we run through the net. I have no idea what Cleveland's going to do. It is interesting that they designated Watson to return from the PUP. I mean, that's interesting. Now, again, what if he returns and plays well? And I'm not saying that. I mean, he's ruined that franchise. Well, the person who decided to write that check ruined the franchise. But now you're starting to get yourself into a position where it's not a favorable position. It's not. Deshaun Watson has not been the same quarterback that we saw early on in his career. And there's a lot of reasons why, and we don't need to rehash it. I mean, everyone was looking at this kid, and what did we look at? We looked at 2020. On a bad team, he threw close to 5,000 yards and 32 touchdowns. And then we kind of know what transpired after, signed the big deal with the Cleveland Browns, and it hasn't worked out. It just has not worked out for a variety of reasons. But now you got him back, and he's returning to practice for the first time in a year. I mean, the timing of it's pretty interesting, is it not? I think it is. You got a 21-day practice window, right? And he's missed the entire 2025 season. He was rehabbing from the Achilles. He tore it during week 7 of 2024, re-injured it again a couple months later during the early stages of the recovery. Now, okay, why do you make that move? Why do you make that move now? You've elevated two rookie quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, for most of the season. And we already know it's been a disastrous trade. That move for Deshaun Watson was disastrous. You're trading a former Pro Bowler at the time, talent, but very controversial because all the crap that happened off the field. And you go to Cleveland for a boatload of compensation, including what? 3 first-round draft picks. Then you sign a 5-year, $230 million contract, guaranteed. And if you go back, Jimmy Haslam said, listen, we took a big swing and miss. A big swing and miss. But now, all of a sudden, he's in the picture. So, the mea culpa, right? You're drafting Gabriel and Sanders, the past draft. I don't know. I mean, if you read between the lines, like, so why open the window now, right? Why open it now? So I guess they want to see, all right, let's start the road to recovery, right? To rehab, right? Get them excited, get them happy to play football again, get them ready. Here we go. Individual drills, this, that, the other. Or is it do all that? And yeah, we're thinking that we want this guy to play in 2025. I mean, is Deshaun Watson? You're talking about like Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston has proven he is a great teammate. Jameis Winston has proven he is a mentor. Russell Wilson is not. Winston is. Winston, character guy. Here we go. I'm going to take a young quarterback under my wing, right? So, do you want Deshaun Watson in a quarterback's room trying to mentor Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel? Now, I'm not going to suggest that the relationship between these two or three, I mean, I think there's a little bit of jealousy between Gabriel and Sanders and Gabriel. Some of the stuff that's come out of Gabriel's mouth, you almost take it as kind of a backhanded slap, little slight at Sanders, but just hold that for a second. So you got an experienced quarterback. You want him to try to mentor these guys, but is he the answer? Or are we sitting there saying, well, it's a monster contract. It hasn't worked out, but look, he can still play. He can still play. Go somewhere and resurrect your career. Go ahead. Play well for us, even though you lost 10 of 19 starts. You've had a injury-riddled stint. Your quarterback rating stinks. Your contract, your off-the-field issues are probably going to make you, I'm not even going to use the phrase that I was about to, but, radioactive, right, moving forward. So who's going to take a flyer on you? Who's going to take a flyer on you? And it's interesting. It really is. Because if you think about this, 2026, last year in Cleveland, if you looked at his deal, it expires. His restructured deal, I just pulled it up, expires following 2026. But he still owed a fully guaranteed 131 million from the Browns. It's just bizarre what's going on in Cleveland, and it could be worse. I mean, it could be worse. You've got what's going on in Cleveland. You've got the situation in Miami, which clearly, it is a bad spot with Tua. You got the situation in Arizona where they've got buyer's remorse. By the way, Justin Herbert surgery on his fractured left hand sat out Wednesday's practice ahead of that huge game between the Chargers and the Eagles Monday night. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Let me see what some of you guys are saying here. BB chimes in. Q, did you see the reports that Giants players are telling beat reporters that the next head coach has to be hard on them and hold them accountable? Well, you would think. Would you not? I mean, listen, it's an appealing job because they have a quarterback. But I'm not going to sit here in early December and go over Joe Shane's track record. I already told you what I felt. I would probably say C- to D, but I'm not bringing him back. And that's the problem when you bring back lame duck head coach, GM. It's never a good fit. What do we got here? Mikey J chimes in. Q, always loving to catch the show, not only on the dial anymore. That's okay. I'll check it right here on YouTube. I know you used to say this about the Philadelphia Eagles when you're talking about coaches having a shelf life. I remember you mentioned Chip Kelly wasn't going to last 3+ seasons in the NFL. Peterson won a Super Bowl, but they finally jettisoned him. I think it was more about personality and his unwillingness to change. Do you foresee that same situation happening with Sirianni? It's trending like that, right? It's trending like that. But Sirianni's already made it clear about late season, in-game changing, the adjustments, stripping the offensive coordinator. I thought Doug pretty much was arrogant. I think the message with Doug, Doug Peterson, I think caught lightning in a bottle. I really do. I think he caught lightning in a bottle because you had, he was with the Eagles for 5 seasons. And the issue was that Jeffrey Lurie and Doug were not on the same page when it was about, what? The offense and the quarterback situation. I mean, it feels like it's a lifetime ago. He was fired 21. And there was a lot of conflicting reports coming from some of the talking heads. There was a lot of reports coming from the beat writers that had a pretty good pulse on what was going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. And if we recall, he wanted to retain Dave Phipp, right? Special teams, coach, right? He wanted to bring back one of his DB coaches. He wanted to promote, I think, one of his defensive line coaches and move him to like DC. And all these potential moves, Jeffrey Lurie was like, nah, this is underwhelming to me. Let's go outside. And now follow me. Let's go outside the building, not internal candidates, external candidates, top credentials. And that's kind of where the disconnect started. And think about this at the time, if you kind of fast forward it 20 something odd months, and when Doug was in Jacksonville, right? And you think about, who's the OC? Press Taylor. That was also one of the rubs, one of the sticking points. And the offense in 2020 was horrible. And I think, people will argue, well, the only option is to promote within, and he was not going to budge. And I think Jeffrey Lurie at the time gave him like that ultimatum. The Jacksonville situation was bad because they needed a scapegoat. That's when they fired Dave Caldwell. And then you knew the handwriting was on the wall for Doug. So I bring it up because you're saying, is this comparable? Do you foresee a scenario like this happening right now with Nick Sirianni? Do we sit there and say Doug Peterson was a great head coach and Nick Sirianni is a great head coach? No, we don't. I mean, really, we don't. I mean, you're talking about you have an MVP type of season from Carson Wentz. He goes down in that Rams game, and then Nick Foles comes in, and the rest is history. That's lightning in a bottle with a backup. We've seen it. Giants did it when Sims went down and Haas came in. And I remember being on the air. We had Jeff Hostetler on the air because everyone was saying there's no chance in hell the Eagles are going to do anything now. They're not making a run. And I remember I said, listen, they can beat the Patriots. We've seen it. And the argument, the pushback I got was there's no way you're comparing Foles to Brady. I wasn't. But what I was saying, sometimes it's just your time and it's your day. And Haas had his day against Buffalo. He didn't put up gaudy numbers. Foles outplayed Brady and made the throws that he needed to make. It was his time, his moment. He grabbed it. And I think that was all masked because everyone was saying, well, that's a hell of a job by Doug, right? Running the Philly special and, dilly, whatever. Let's run it. Okay. It's in folklore. Everyone knows. And you lost your franchise quarterback and you won it with a backup. So the equity went up substantially. Like if Jalen Hurts goes down and McKee steps up and they win a bunch of playoff games and get to the Super Bowl, everyone's going to sit there and say, man, what a great job Sirianni did. That's the next man up mentality in the NFL. Parcells wasn't a better coach because Sims went down and Hostetler came in. He just knew how to lead. He knew how to motivate. That's what made him special. He knew how to get under players' skin and how to basically prod them a little bit. Light a fire under their ass. I don't think Sirianni's that guy. Doug wasn't that guy. So I don't know how it's going to play out. All I can tell you is the film doesn't lie. The film doesn't lie. And right now, there is something fundamentally wrong with their offense. Every team at this point, every team at this point is flawed. They're flawed. There's some really good football teams out there. Everyone else is kind of mediocre and bad, but even the very good football teams, Seattle, the Rams, Buffalo, New England, the Eagles, the Colts, they're flawed. They're all flawed. The Patriots are 11-2. They won 10 straight. They're not a juggernaut. Baltimore, and we're talking about the division, 6-6. They're not like they were in years past. Jacksonville's a flawed team because you can't trust that quarterback. Indianapolis is a flawed team because if you shut down Taylor, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop with Daniel Jones. Houston Texans have a very good defense, but we don't know what the hell's going to go on with the quarterback. He's a hit away from being concussed again. They're flawed. Denver, their defense is great, but their offense is flawed. The Chargers are an enigma. Kansas City looks cooked. The Eagles are flawed because their offense is bad. Dallas, you can never trust them in a big spot. The Bears still have a young team. And sometimes young teams, they might not know any better, but, they don't pass for a lot of yardage, but they're winning games. They've got one of the, flawed passing attack. It's one of the worst in the NFL. Every team we're talking about that we think is very good, they're all flawed. That's what makes this season so unique. And I feel like it's the same argument year in and year in with the NFL. Parity. The years of getting the 12-4, 13-3, 14-2. Think about this. How many teams right now in the NFL have 10 or more wins? How many teams? Two. New England and Denver. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, 6 wins. Cincinnati, 4 wins. Jacksonville, 8 wins. Indianapolis, 8 wins. Texans, 7 wins. Chargers, 8 wins. Kansas City, 6 wins. Dallas, 6 wins. Eagles, 8 wins. The Bears, 9 wins. Green Bay, 8 wins. Detroit, that everyone was like, put them in the NFC Championship. Flawed, 7 wins. There's parity this year. So it's going to be which team gets hot late. That's how it always is. Which team gets hot late? Runs the football, gets to the quarterback, doesn't turn it over. And out of all those teams I mentioned, you got a young quarterback in Drake May, but a good team, a physical team, a coach that's won before. But that quarterback is still young. Buffalo Bills can't stop the run. They can run the football. Pressure on them to get to a Super Bowl. And sometimes when there's pressure, what do? You tighten up, you tense. Baltimore has been dealing with so many injuries, and the argument's always been Lamar Jackson's got to go to a Super Bowl, AFC Championship, win it, get to the Super Bowl. You shut down Henry, they're in trouble. Jacksonville, I don't trust the quarterback. Indianapolis, as much as I like Daniel Jones, I don't trust him. Denver, I'm a Bo Nix guy. They can win with that defense, but when push comes to shove, that kid's going to have to make a play with his arm. We don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, you can just keep going on and on. There's such parity that if one of these teams really gets hot, I mean, for me to suggest or for you guys to sit there and say, man, New England is such a hot team. We're talking if the playoffs started now because you're looking at the Denver Broncos and the Patriots winning 9 and 10 games respectively. Eventually a fan would say they got to stub their toe. Like get that bad loss out of your way now. Because it's very hard to imagine winning 3-4 more games and then ripping through the playoffs. And now you're talking about a 17-game winning streak. That's like nearly impossible. We don't see that anymore in the NFL. Those days are long gone. So you take your L now during the regular season. You certainly don't want to take it in a postseason. You're one and done. But there's such parity. And coaching plays a part. It really does. Coaching plays a huge hand, especially late in the season come playoff time. Seattle's got a good head coach. The Rams have a very good head coach. Okay. Buffalo has a good coach, but he's got to get over that hump. New England has a very good coach. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, they've got veteran head coaches who have won before, but they're not really good football teams. Indianapolis has a good head coach. Even Jacksonville has a good head coach. Denver has a Super Bowl winning head coach. Coaching plays a hand in here. So right now, I look all around and I can't honestly sit there and say this team, write them in, man, write them in. I can't do it. It's beyond week to week. Come on. Who had the Panthers beating the Rams? Who had the Cowboys beating the Chiefs? I bet a lot of you guys are sitting there saying Thursday Night Football Lions are dropping 3 against the Cowboys. They're going to smoke the Cowboys. What if the Cowboys go in Detroit and beat the Lions? Does that say more about the Cowboys being legit or more of an indictment on the Lions? What if Seattle, who looks like a juggernaut, and they put up a lot of points, and they go on the road and they lose by 10 against a horrible Falcons team, or Cincinnati beats Buffalo? It's a week-to-week proposition in the NFL. That's all it is. Teams get hot, then they cool off, then they get on a run. That's just how it is. Jovan says that's how I felt about the Eagles last year. Take your L, which happened in week 16, and they were fine after that. Yeah, it's crazy to say that, right? It's almost like this. What are you talking about? That's a loser mentality. We're talking about these teams that are really hot, like Denver, the Patriots. Do you really believe these teams are not going to lose another football game? I mean, do we really believe that? It's okay to stub your toe. Denver might stub their toe against a bad Raiders team. Maybe the Raiders are like, you know what? We're so tired of this crap. We know we're bad. We're just going to go balls to the walls, man. You know what? We're going to try to win this friggin' game. Even if it's close in the fourth quarter and we tied up, we're going for two. Like Washington tried to do the other night. Like Washington tried to do. I mean, look, you've got some dog games this weekend. You got the Titans and the Browns. Now, you're only going to watch that for a couple things. Myles Garrett is on pace to break Straham's sack record. And I think another sack gets him the record for most sacks in the first 13 games in NFL history. That's when they started to clock the sack back in what, 81, 82. You got Cam Ward and Sanders, totals 38 and a half. You know, that doesn't, you're not going to hang your hat on that. So there's a reason you're going to watch that game a little bit. You know, the Steelers and the Ravens on paper, that's AFC North, and there's a lot at stake because the winner of that game is going to be the front runner to win the division. Now, the Ravens screwed themselves by losing to Cincinnati because I felt if they beat Cincinnati, they were going to beat the Steelers. They would have beat Cincinnati again. But then in a couple of weeks, they got New England. And they closed the season against the Steelers. And I'm wondering, are they going to flex that game depending upon how it lays out? So there's something at stake in that game. You know, the Eagles and Chargers, something at stake. You know, Seattle is looking at the Rams, so Seattle's got to go in Atlanta, take care of business. You're talking home field advantage right now. Home field advantage. Packers and the Bears, that's a good game. Rams and the Cardinals, that's a decent game on paper. Texans and the Chiefs. The Texans can basically end the Chiefs season. They can literally end the Chiefs season, but you're going to get some bad games. That just happens. A man says, I swear I seen Watson walking the sidewalk on Atlantic Avenue. Tennessee Avenue. Denver's last 4 games after this week's game versus Vegas are tough. Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City, and the Chargers. We were comparing schedules the other day, obviously with New England and Denver both jockeying for home field advantage right now. New England's 11-2. They've got the Bills coming up, the Ravens, the Jets, the Dolphins. By the way, all AFC games. Now, the Buffalo game is big because let's just say the Bills win that game. They go to 9-4. New England then drops to 11-3. Now, we got to take it a step further. In the division, that would be New England's first divisional loss, and they already beat Buffalo. The Bills moved to 3-2. Conference records would be the same, 6-3. The Bills get the win. They move to 6-3. Puts a little more pressure on New England because if they stumble and say they, for some inexplicable reason, lost to the Jets or the Dolphins, and then the Bills turn around and the Bills run the table, they're going to win the AFC East. Now, the Bills have Cincinnati, the Patriots, at Cleveland, and they get the Eagles at home late December, and then they close out the season against the Jets. I don't think they're going to flex that game because it's against the Jets. Now, if it has AFC East implications, then they're going to flex it. That'll be a 425 game. That should be a CBS game. Now, if you look at the playoffs right now, like breaking it down. So you've got New England, the top seed, Denver, 2 seed, Jacksonville, the 3rd seed. They would win a tiebreaker over Indianapolis based on best win percentage in common games. Baltimore sits at 4. They win a tiebreak over Pittsburgh based on best win percentage in common games. Chargers at 5, Indianapolis 6, Buffalo 7th seed, Texans, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, all on the outside looking in. NFC, Chicago's the top seed. The Rams are the 2 seed. The Eagles are the 3 seed. There is still a shot for the Eagles to get home field advantage. Tampa's the 4 seed, Seattle's the 5 seed, Green Bay's the 6 seed, San Fran's the 7 seed, Detroit, Dallas, Carolina, all on the outside looking in. The Rams have a tiebreak over Seattle based on head-to-head win percentage, and Chicago has the tiebreak over the Rams based on best win percentage in conference games. So that's when the conference starts to really come into play. The Rams are 4-3 in the conference. That's why that Panthers loss was crippling. The Bears are 6-2 in the conference. The Bears have the Packers coming up. They have the Packers twice, the 49ers and the Lions. So they're, again, now follow me. 9-3, 10 wins, you say to yourself, you're getting in the playoffs. That's not going to be the case this season. That's not. The Bears have won 5 straight, but they have the Packers twice, the 49ers, who are jockeying for position to get a playoff spot. That game's on the road. And then they got the Lions. So you might, is it plausible? You might get 3 teams in a division all with 10 wins, 10 plus wins, and only 1 or 2 makes the playoffs? That's parity. That's crazy to think about that. Garrett has 19 sacks already. Yes. It is. And you would suspect against the Titans, I mean, I'll give you his prop right now. You would suspect probably what do you think? 1.5, 2 sacks over against the Titans? It's something we'll talk about tomorrow on Back Your Play. I mean, he might have 5 sacks in this game, to be quite honest with you. What's he got? He's got through 13 weeks, 12 games played, 19 sacks. It's just remarkable. It's just utterly remarkable. 15 sacks in his last 6 games. No other player has done that since sacks began being tracked back in '82. And if you want to take it a further step, Cam Ward's been sacked 48 times. He's on pace for 27 sacks, which shatters Strahan's 22.5, or some people will say 21.5. Wow. He's had more than 3.5 sacks in 2 games with 4 and 5 sack performances in the last 5. I mean, you're talking about a generational run from a generational defensive player. And even though this is a crappy matchup on paper, I think his sack total for this game is 2.5 over. The movie put on my guy Trent almost made me choke on my beer. You're talking about one of the best tackles in the game, right? He's Myles Garrett is just a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal defensive end. I mean, that is a game wrecker. That's a game wrecker. He's just phenomenal. He's a great football player, and he's a Hall of Famer. We already know that, but it stinks that he's with a downtrodden franchise. I mean, can you imagine if Garrett was on Kansas City, Baltimore, Philly, New England, Buffalo, the Lions? I mean, at least teams that in the spotlight, prime time, success, they've won Super Bowls, championships, divisions. And he wanted that contract, so I'm not, let's call for what it is. But man, he's a phenomenal player, man. A phenomenal player. He's going to break the record. He might shatter the record. I'm trying to think stats wise, anything else. I don't think we're getting a 5,000 yard passer. I just don't see it. Drake May. His projected numbers come out to 4,500 yards. And I started and end with him because he leads the league in passing right now. So we're not getting a 5,000 yard passer. Trying trying to think. Forget about a 2,000-yard rusher. That's not happening. Taylor's not getting 2,000 yards. I mean, he's sitting at, he had 37 carries overseas for 244. Since then, 16 and 21. They're saving him for the playoffs, but he's not gonna he's not sniffing 2,000 yards, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm trying to think, is there anything? Well, how about JSN? So right now he's at 1,300 yards with 5 games to go. Can he get to 2,000? Let me check out his game logs. He would have to, you're talking another 705 games. Let me check his overview. He's on pace for 1,893 yards. So if he had a couple 165 games, he would be there. He would be very close. Now, no player has ever gone over 2,000 receiving yards in a single NFL season. I'm not talking about total yards, because Cooper Kupp had well over 2,100 back in 2021. The most yards receiving in a season, and was it either Calvin Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald? Didn't Calvin Johnson have very close to 2,000 yards? Megatron was a beast. That's another great player that overshadowed the fact that never played on good teams. 1,900 yards. Let me check. He had. I got to pull up his stats. He was a great wide receiver. 1964. So in 2012, Calvin Johnson had 1,900 yards. Wow, that's crazy. He had 1,900 yards, but he only found the end zone 5 times. He had 122 receptions on 204 targets. And who the hell won the MVP that year? Who won the MVP that year? Was that the year Adrian Peterson rushed for over 2,000 yards? 2012, I think it was. Wow. So yeah, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that. Devontae Adams finishes with 20 touchdowns, maybe. Pretty interesting how Rodgers was begging for the guy and he couldn't do anything last year. And now look at him. He's having a resurgent season. Yeah, could be. I mean, look who he's got throwing the football, right? He's at 14. He's dealing with a hammy injury. Let me see his overview. Yeah, 20 touchdowns. But we've seen wide receivers 20 before, right? Obviously. Does CMC have a legitimate shot at the MVP? I was thinking about this the other day. I'm glad you brought this up. I'm going to pull up right now your current, okay? Your current odds. Actually, let me do it. This was, okay, entering. These are updated. Now, mind you, Stafford had the 2 picks, and Drake May went off on Monday night. So, May is still a very slight favorite over Stafford because you got that week 13 swing. So right now he's at minus 135. And I think he's a favorite with DK. So he's had a phenomenal second season. For what he's doing as a second year quarterback, plus his team hasn't lost since week 3, and they're about to win the AFC East. I think it's one of the biggest stories of the NFL season. And they can also get the top seed. I say right now, Drake May is the MVP. And I know prisoner of the moment, Matthew Stafford. A week ago, I said it was Stafford, but he had the 2 picks and lost a fumble. And it was not the best performance against the Panthers. Now, if he goes on a heater, like we saw Big Ben do a couple of years ago, and if he if he throws for another 15 touchdown passes in 4 or 5 games, okay. Again, am I going to sit there and say that loss to the Panthers cost Stafford? Maybe in the eyes of the voters, right? May to me, I think, has the inside track. Now, going to CMC, if you look at his numbers, the first thing that's going to come to mind is what? His total yards from scrimmage. So you're a 49ers fan. Can you take a step back and say right there, he's been the offensive catalyst. He's been that consistent offensive catalyst, hands down. If you take him off that team, they're a 1 or 2 win team. And I'm not answering it for you. I'm just asking, because I think if you're talking about value and what the value that the player, I mean, it's different. In baseball, we're talking about the WAR, right? How many games do we project to win because of you and your stats and your performance? Now, CMC, I think he is a dark horse, but if he has, let's just say, what's he averaging? Total yards per scrimmage. So if he goes over 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving, then it goes back to the Roger Craig argument of 1985, where Roger Craig was the first back to go for over 1,000 yards receiving and also rushing. And that same season, Roger Craig led the NFL in receptions as a running back. McCaffrey has 86 receptions for 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's rushed for 800 yards, and he only has 8 touchdowns. So you're looking at 13 total. Let's compute his numbers real quick. Let's compute his numbers. Let's say he rushes for 1,200 yards, and he has 1,200 yards receiving. You're talking almost 2,500 total yards from scrimmage and close to 20 touchdowns. I mean, that's a career, man. That is you make a very compelling case, but I think the problem is, as you know, the NFL MVP is typically reserved for what position? The quarterback position, unless you have that 2,000 plus yard season where you go up, you have an Adrian Peterson. I mean, Peyton Manning threw for 40 touchdowns and well over 4,500 yards, and AP won it. But it's a great question. If he ends up with 1,300 yards receiving, 1,300 yards, let me pull up. Well, hold on. Let's take it a step further while we're doing this. Let's take it a step further. Let's go to reception. So 82, 86, 86, 89, 85. So JSN has 82 receptions. Nakua has 86. Jamar Chase has 86. And that kid McBride has 88. And McCaffrey has 85. So let's just play devil's advocate. If he turns around and has 110 receptions, 1,200 yards, a couple more touchdowns, he rushes for over 1,200 yards, a couple more touchdowns, and the 49ers win 10 games, I mean, it's going to be very tough for them to win the division. But you take him off that offense. I mean, look, there are 9 wins right now. Actually, pardon me, they could still win a division. I'm sorry. There are 9 wins right now. They can still win the division. And they have a very good conference record. So they're 4-1 in the division. So if the 49ers win 11 games, they win a division, they get a bye. You're talking about regular season, and he puts up those numbers. I think you make a strong case for him. 1,400 at DraftKings right now. Oh, offensive player of the year. Wow. I would take a little flyer on that. Offensive player of the year at plus 1,400? Jeez. That's extremely tempting. I'm trying to think who that actually, Jovan, that might be a better play than MVP. Because I don't know what his, and I'm sure you have it right in front of you, his MVP odds are right now. Am I seeing this correct? 3,500? Is that accurate? So this is FanDuel. He's at plus 3,500. Man, I'll tell you, I would throw a couple dollars on offensive player of the year and MVP right now. At those odds, he might have a 200-yard from scrimmage game. It's a great question. It also speaks to the bigger issue when we're talking about the MVP in the NFL. It's almost like this bias against running backs and wide receivers because it's a quarterback-driven league. So we always look at the quarterback under center. It's rare we get running backs winning MVPs. I mean, you can go all the way back, from the dawn of time, right? It was always quarterback. You had that rarity, right? The Larry Browns of the world winning in 72, Juice in 73 running back because of 2,000 yards. But then Ken Stabler, Fran Tarkenton, Burt Jones, quarterback. Now, you had a stretch, believe it or not, Walter Payton, Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, right? I mean, you're talking about great running backs. But remember, back in the day, it was AP, and then they would call it Sporting News Jim Thorpe Trophy Award. And then they switched it to Most Valuable Player. And there have been some really, I think worthy, listen, you're going through like the litany in the 90s of a who's who: Emmitt Smith, Steve Young, Brett Favre, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, Randall Cunningham, Joe Montana, Warren Moon. You keep going all over the place. But the award really, it's always the quarterback: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Rodgers, Jackson, Mahomes, Brady, Ryan, Newton, Rodgers, Manning, AP. There's your running back. Prior to that, Tomlinson. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You had back-to-back running backs win it, Sanders and Terrell Davis. Emmett won it 7. Thurman won it 8. Marcus Allen is 9. I mean, I can keep going, but point is, you've had about 15 running backs or 15 times a back won the award. It's been 99% dominated by the quarterback, and then you had um, some of those. I don't want to call them aberrations because, let's be honest, Lawrence Taylor. I mean that's deserving, right? So Taylor wins it in '86. He was just the best player on the planet. He was just a dominant player. He was unbelievable. And you're talking about, a linebacker winning the award, a defensive player. Mark Mosley, people argue to this day, short season kicker. Okay, fine. But Washington fans will tell you he was the best player that year, even though they had a running back by the name of John Riggins. Point is, you know, aside from a Paul Hornung, Jim Taylor, it's always a quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. Alan Page won it one year back in '71. So now you're talking about a defensive tackle. So that's why they look at offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year. But MVP is the most valuable player. And it's not the most valuable player to the team, it's the most valuable player to the league. That's what I've been told by MVP voters. Now, I can argue that. So if I take a guy like Christian McCaffrey off the 49ers, how good are they? If I take Josh Allen or Jackson or Mahomes off of their teams respectively and they got to go to backup quarterbacks, they're not going to win a lot of games. So you bring up a very valid point. You bring up a very good point. Definitely that's something to watch and monitor because if Drake May has a couple of bad games and Stafford stubs his toe and Prescott's numbers drop off and McCaffrey's are going up, then that's what happens. The odds jump and they swing in his favor. All right, NBA tonight. I don't really like any plays here. Not the business, by the way. You got about 6 or 7 games, but a little more on the Giannis talk. Mignana. By the way, Costco is going to join us at 4 o'clock tomorrow on a Thursday. We're going to talk a lot of college football. Lloyd and Bueller on Friday, Football Friday edition. Lloyd and I are dropping a new edition of Back Your Play, so that'll be out tomorrow. That'll air Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 12 on TV 48 WWON in New York. So check that out. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel as you guys always do. Greatly appreciated. And I just want to get the sponsors in here as we're wrapping it up. Always appreciate Get Ready with Tea, Three Brooks Bourbon, Fresh Roasted Coffee, and of course, our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Let me squeeze in another comment. Q, you mentioned Schwarber and Alonso. What's the realistic expectations on both their landing spots? I think the Phillies are going to make a serious run at Schwarber. I think Boston's going to make a run at Pete Alonso. I just do. And I also think that the San Francisco Giants might be in play for Kyle Schwarber. They want power. They've been starved for power. And like I said, for the Phillies, signing him is a priority, but you're not close to a deal. And Cincinnati could be that dark horse. Suarez, I think is if I'm the Phillies, I'm bringing him back. I know it's that likely destination. Lefties are commodities, but there are some insiders that think it might be like a crazy landing spot for him. Castellanos, they got to move. They got to trade him. You got 20 million left on the contract. You got to eat most of his salary to move him. Just get him out of town, man. I mean, it's just that move hasn't panned out. Matty Ice chimes in. What'd you think of Williams to the Mets? Q. I mentioned this when we were talking baseball in the 4 o'clock hour. It's a good deal. You got no opt-outs, right, or options. You got $6 million signing bonus, 3 years, 51. Now, his role will depend if the Mets decide we're going to re-sign Diaz, who opted out of his contract last month. And right now, Diaz is probably considered the top free agent reliever on the market. So I can't, Matt, I can't say just because you got Williams right now that erases any possibility that the Mets are going to re-sign Diaz. I mean, I know they're interested in bringing him back, but you had to bolster up the back end of the bullpen, like a lot of teams have to do. Let me squeeze in one or two more. G Fan chiming in like he typically does. Q, I know you talked a lot about this the other day with Joe Shane. I was listening to your boys in New York. They actually graded him out a B plus to a C. I can't do that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because ultimately, the GM is tagged with what? The wins and losses, just like the head coach. Just like the head coach. I mean, to me, I haven't graded out as an F. I really do. Now, I can get into a little more of that Friday with Lloyd. Um, but, you know, coach is coach and the GMs draft the players. And they both have to be held accountable. And that's one of the issues that I've had for a while now. You just, listen, you can't for the life of me tell me that you got a pulse on your locker room when you don't know how to punish players, you don't know how to hold them accountable, and your message is falling on deaf ears. When that happens and you're not playing good football, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And you're going to be out of a friggin' job. And we saw it. And we're going to continue to see it all over the place. Because that is the NFL. If you don't win, you're in trouble. Interesting. D chimes in. He tagged me. He goes, funny you're talking about Calvin Johnson. 14 receptions, 329 yards the last time the Lions faced the Cowboys. What was that, 2013? Crazy, right? He was a great, great player. All right, got to start wrapping it up. Excellent stuff from you guys on a Woosah Wednesday. You kept me in check. Do me a favor. Check out all the podcasts on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart. We are also, as I mentioned, coming at you on X on SR 1029 FM, the game part of the Odyssey app. So if you download Odyssey app and you search Coastal Sports Digital Network, you will soon be able to hear the show as well. Check out the YouTube channel at Rich Q. We got the shorts up, TikTok, Rich Q on a mic, and follow me on X. And of course, all social media platforms at Rich Q on Q. And again, special thanks again, Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea, fresh roasted coffee, Jersey Shore breaks, played against sports, 2 locations, Deptford and Mount Laurel. Have a wonderful sports weekend. Back in the saddle manana on a Thursday. Costco is going to join us. A lot of college football. Kiffin, we'll get into that. In the 4 o'clock hour, a little more baseball, certainly a lot more NBA. We'll monitor this Giannis situation with the Milwaukee Bucks, and we'll talk a lot more NFL. We'll get you set for Thursday night football, the Lions and the Dallas Cowboys to jumpstart Week 14 in the NFL. Have a good sports Wednesday. Be safe, be sound. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. This has been On Cue. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 4 o'clock straight up. Hasta luego, buen día.